I read a lot of romances this month. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. This is kind of going to be my March wrap up, but it's not really because I'm not going to be talking about all the books I have read in March. I've read to date almost 60 novels, and since March hasn't actually ended by the time that I've started filming this novel, it means that I can read more and I expect to read more. Having individual videos broken down by genres does me a service as well as doing you a service, because obviously you don't want to sit here and watch a 60-minute video of me talking about each book that I read. Obviously, it doesn't give me the ability to release my pent-up aggression that I have towards specific novels that I gave 1 or 2 stars to. So I figured that this video would be more geared towards the romantic comedy readers out there and the more romance readers. Specifically, all these novels actually come from Berkley Romance, or majority of the romances that I've read come from Berkley Romance. So I kind of went back into 2019 and found the releases that I haven't read, and I read those. And then now I got really excited and I also started reading the 2020 Berkley Romance arc. So I have a lot of romances to talk to you about, so let's get started. So the first romance I want to talk about is actually a March release romance. This one actually came out on March 10th and it's called Undercover Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams, and this novel is very popular among Bookstagram. It's very popular among BookTube. I mean, everyone kind of already knows about this series, but basically this series follows a group of characters who are male who read romances to figure out their relationship and the females that are in their lives. So this book follows our two main characters, Mac and Liv, and Mac and Liv are kind of complete opposites. Mac is a very hopeless romantic. He believes in romance novels and he believes in falling in love, and he just wants to find his soulmate so that he can cherish and love and throw money at. And basically Liv is the complete opposite. She came from a broken family with a father who was very absent in her life, and she doesn't believe in long-term relationships. She doesn't believe in love, clearly does not want to do anything with Mac. So what happens is that this book actually follows the subgenre of romantic suspense, and we start to learn that Liv is in greater danger than we expect her to be, because in her workplace there's a girl that's being sexually harassed by her boss, and she stands up for her, but only for her to get fired in the end. And she is doing like undercover digging to figure out if the boss is more cynical than he already appears to be, and she gets herself into a lot of danger, and Mac is always there to try to protect her and to actually help her solve the crime, because he can't live with himself knowing that someone out there is manipulating girls. Overall, I thought this book was okay at best. I did not like Liv as a character. I thought that she was very mean. She was deemed to be like a very sassy, quirky girl, but the only problem with that I have with those characters is that sometimes the author tends to force her to be sassy, which comes off as bitchy, and the comments that she says are unwarranted. Mac does not deserve someone to be so cruel to him all the time. And I was just like, calm down, Liv. Like, nobody said anything. Nobody accused you of anything. Why do you have to be so mean? So I couldn't really stand Liv a lot of the times. As for Mac, I felt like Mac was just having this major problem where he was a hopeless romantic and he really wanted a girlfriend. So he was willing to do anything for the girl. Like, you can tell that he's just doing it because he thinks that it's the right thing to do, and it was very frustrating. But what I did appreciate about this book is that it talked about a lot of things happening in the workplace, especially now today in the present world, with sexual harassment, with like people getting paid off so that they don't talk about it and it doesn't become like this whole public hearing case, and it's just very important issues. But overall, the romance just didn't hit it for me, and it ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next novel that I want to talk about is The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman, and this book was recommended to me by my friend Simone from Simone and Her Books on Instagram. And this book came out last year and I just never got into it. Like, I just never got into it, but I don't know why, because I love this novel. This novel was fantastic. It's about a girl named Nina Hill, and Nina Hill is kind of like in her early 30s or mid 30s, and she's single. Her mom died recently, so she has no family, and all she has is her cat, her books, her bullet journaling, and her job at the bookstore, and also all her book clubs and bookish activities. So she's really obsessed with reading and she's really obsessed with books. So you can already tell that I love this book because it's about books. So I feel like a lot of book lovers would really appreciate this book, because I related to Nina a lot, especially when she was bullet journaling her like reading time, and she basically made plans for herself so she can read, and it looks like she's really busy, but she's not. She's just clocking in like 5 hours a day, like after work, just to read. And I'm like, that's me. Like, I literally like sometimes cancel plans with my friends just so I could focus on reading, or focus on taking photos of books, or focus on filming videos for books. So I really enjoyed the story. I didn't expect a romance to blossom because people were telling me that it's more of a women's fiction novel, but yes, we learned more about her family that just got dumped onto her after her father died, and she inherits a bunch of money. But I also didn't realize that she was going to fall in love with the guy, and for the romance to be so sweet and so touching. I love this uplifting novel. It definitely made me a lot happier than expected. It made me a lot happier during a time like this as well, and it was just so fluffy and romantic, and I can't recommend this book enough. So the next novel that I read is not really like a contemporary romantic comedy, but it's like a romantic comedy historical romance, and it's Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. And this book has blown up on Instagram, has blown up on book bloggers pages forever, so I don't really need to talk to you more about it. But in case that you guys don't know, this book is about two characters, and our main female character is basically changing the life of Britain itself. She is fighting for women's suffrage. She wants women to have the right to vote and to have a voice in her government and the voice in her country. And it's such like a feminist novel. Like, it includes very strong female characters who are fighting for what they believe in and who are changing things for the better, because obviously if they didn't fight for us, we wouldn't have the privileges that we have today in today's government and politics. And we have our main male character, Montgomery, who has his own motivations and who has his own desires, but he finds himself in a crossroad where he has to decide whether he supports the females that he believes in, but also wanting to have his things in the end. And it's just this internal angst of like decision making and choosing things. It's either going for love and going for what's right, or going for your own personal motivations. I really like this novel, and I gave this one 4.5 stars out of 5. So the next novel that I read actually came out in March too. This one came out on March 24th, 2020. So it's fully available for anybody who's interested in reading this novel. I received an ARC of it from HarperCollins Canada, and this book is called If I Never Met You by Mahari McFarlane, and this is a romantic comedy, but I wouldn't say it's a romantic comedy because I wasn't really laughing at some parts. I mean, some parts were funny, but it was also very dramatic and it was very childish in a lot of the parts, so I didn't dub this as romantic comedy. I kind of wanted to borderline say that this was kind of like a women's fiction novel, but then it also wasn't because it included a romance. So this book is about a girl named Lori, and Lori has basically dated the same guy for 18 years. She has agreed with her partner that they don't want to be married by paper because the paper doesn't mean anything, so they just been living in this common law relationship with plans of starting a family. So Lori is actually an older character in this romance novel. She's actually 36 years old. She is a lawyer in the same law firm as her common law partner, and she has been living a perfect life until her partner tells her that he doesn't want to live in this life anymore. He doesn't want to be like locked down with a baby and be locked down with like a mortgage and be locked down to run for partnership and all these things, because Lori and him had plans to start a family very soon, and she is awestruck. She is struck by this. She is dumbfounded by this. She is shocked. She's heartbroken. She just wants to figure out the reasons why he decided to pick up his things and leave her like this in the lurch. And she's going through all these pains and emotions, and obviously seeing her ex every single day in the law firm. So that is until the office player named Jamie comes to her rescue and basically says that he has his own motivations of a fake relationship, and that they should start a fake relationship because he wants to make partner at the firm. She wants to get back at her ex. So they decide to enter into a fake relationship where they don't do any of the like sexual stuff, but like they basically fish people on social media and they take photos making them people think that they are together. And there's basically a lot of office politics and a lot of like feminist things happening in this book that I appreciated. I never knew how toxic a office setting could be until I read this novel. I felt like everybody was just so out for themselves and just wanted to climb the corporate ladder or out for their own personal motivations that it made my skin crawl. Like, I was just so frustrated at how evil some of these characters were and how they were getting into Lori and Jamie's businesses for their own personal goals. And I was just blown away by that. And this book definitely took a darker tone as well, because Lori is going through a hard breakup, and Mahari did a great job at describing all the emotions someone might have when they go through a long-term breakup, like such as this one. Definitely it wasn't a romantic comedy in a lot of the senses. And also Jamie and Laurie basically don't do anything together. Like by doing anything together, like I'm talking the steam level is like next to zero, because they are getting to know each other for majority of the book and they're slowly falling in love with each other. So if you guys are into slow burn novels, this one might be for you. Unfortunately, this one is just not for me. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars because while I enjoyed the journey that the book took me to, it just wasn't good enough to get a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I thought the ending felt a little bit rushed as well, and I didn't really appreciate it, so that's why I stuck with my rating. So the next novel that I picked up is Not the Girl You Marry by Andy J. Christopher, and let me give you a warning that if you read the reviews on Goodreads, it's very pathetic and it's very sad. This book received like a 3.22 on Goodreads, and that's very low in terms of my standards because that's so close to a 2.9, and it just means that people are not liking it. And if you scroll through the reviews, people are giving constant 2 stars, 1 stars, DNFs, and I can see why. But the thing is that I actually listened to the audiobook of this novel, and I want to thank God that I did that, because lots of people were complaining about the writing and how it was just not good and how it was slow and how the characters were just so frustrating. But in terms of audiobooks, obviously someone's reading it to you, so they have more energy put into the words, so it didn't read as dry as it was. I'm sure if I went back and read the physical copy, I wouldn't be able to do it and I would DNF this book. But the writing in this is definitely more showing than telling, so that's very frustrating. So this book basically follows a romantic comedy. I think it's called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, starring Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. And that movie was very angsty to me because I hate it when characters are lying to each other and that they're trying to like do something that they don't want to do. So this one follows our characters, who is Jack, and Jack is a journalist. Jack wants to be taken seriously. Basically, Andy J. Christopher basically ripped the movie and wrote a book based on the movie. And the journalist is wants to be taken seriously and wants to write hard-hitting journalist pieces. And so he's giving this one last task to write this flirty article regarding how to treat a girl in order to lose the girl. So he has to be a jerk to this poor girl in order to write an article, which still makes no sense to me because you can literally treat someone nicely, think about the opposite of those things, and you can figure out how to write that article. Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you don't have to do it, but he did it anyways, and it just seemed very fake. And we have our main character named Hannah, and Hannah is extremely successful event planner, but she's deemed to be like not domestic enough, so she needs to fix up her public image so that she can wedding plan, even though like she hates doing wedding planning business stuff. And so she decides to have a fake relationship with Jack, and Jack decides to have a fake relationship with Hannah, and they both don't know that they have their own motivations and their own secrets. And it was just so toxic at a lot of points because they're clearly lying to each other. I did appreciate some parts because they were very sweet, but then again there was a lot of parts that I was caught off guard because of the things that she was spewing out of her mouth, where it's very outlandish and very crude, and I didn't like appreciate it at all. It came out of left field. You know, like sometimes you read like some passages that are very dry, but then the other parts she's talking about like dildos and like penises, and you're just like, where did that come from? So I gave this book overall a 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm sure if I read the physical copy of this book, I'll probably give it a 2 out of 5 stars or follow my friend's leads and DNF this book. So the next novel that I read is Grown Up Pose by Sonia Laley, and this book actually came out I think March 24th, 2020, so it's fully available for you guys to purchase if you guys are interested. This one talks about a Indian woman who has recently been through a divorce or a year of separation from her husband. She is also the mother of a child who I think is like 6 years old, so she is taking on a lot of responsibilities in her life. She's also very young because she got married very young and then she went into motherhood very young, and she's expected to be a grown-up and she's expected to know what she wants to do with the rest of her life. And she suddenly finds herself grinding to a halt because she realizes that she doesn't have any passions outside of being a motherhood and a wife. She finds that she lost herself when she entered into this marriage, and she gave up a lot of her hopes and her a lot of dreams to take care of the family and to take care of her husband. And this is a story about her praying and loving and finding her way to happiness. So she makes a lot of reckless decisions, and I can't agree with a lot of it. It seems very chaotic and very messy as you read it, so I definitely don't don't recommend this book to anybody who doesn't like characters who are deeply flawed and who make a lot of mistakes and make a lot of decisions that make no sense. I have to admit that when I was reading this book, it did leave me to be a little bit frustrated because I didn't get why she was doing all these things out of nowhere, out of left field, and she was hurting so many people in the process when she was going through the divorce, but she didn't really know what she wanted to feel, and then she went into relationships, and then she like left the country. But overall, when you take a step back and look at the beauty of the book, it's pretty good. Well, I like this book because it talked a lot about finding yourself, and it was an uplifting novel, and it was romantic and cute. But I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because I thought the ending was just a little bit too back and forth and a little bit too rushed. But I still recommend this book to you. Obviously, I feel like that this one is going to be the borderline book that a lot of people either love or really hate. For me, I just love this book. So the next novel that I read is actually an e-galley, so I don't actually have the physical arc of this book, but it's called I Was Told It Got Easier by Abby Waxman. Now, I was really highly anticipating this book after reading The Bookish Life of Nina Hill and loving it, so I thought Abby Waxman was going to be my new favorite author, and I was really gonna love it. But I have to tell you guys this right now, that this book is not a romantic comedy and is purely women's fiction. Do not be tricked by the cover of the novel and think that it is romantic comedy and then being disappointed at the end. I personally like women's fiction, so I'm okay with it, but I'm a fan of good women's fiction. So this book follows two characters named Jessica and Emily. Jessica is a 45-year-old mother to Emily. Emily, I think she's like 17 years old, so she's a typical teenager, and this book follows them and their two perspectives of going to this grand university tour across different states so that Emily can decide where she wants to go to university. Jessica is a very high-powered lawyer. She is the top partner in her firm. She stands up for people who are being mistreated in the workplace because of sexism, and she takes care of the household. But she's also been a very distant mother to Emily from working long hours in the office. Emily is your typical teenager who doesn't understand why her mom is always constantly working and becoming a workaholic, and Emily feels like that her mother doesn't understand her at all and doesn't know her passions and her inner issues and her inner problems. They both have difficulty communicating with each other and trying to figure out what each other is actually thinking and how they're thinking and their feelings towards a lot of things. Now, with that being said, I didn't really like this book because I thought the writing to be very dry and very different from The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. It was very boring a lot of the times and very, very predictable. I also thought that this book did a very poor representation of teenagers out there because it was all outdated information. It was basically all generic information. So for example, Emily is seen to be a teenager who always is addicted to her phone and who always takes pictures and posts them on Instagram and texts. Yes, that's what a lot of teenagers do. Yes, that's a lot what I do, but that's not me. And I feel like Abby Waxman tried to make this relatable character by putting a lot of the cons of what teenagers tend to do into this one character. It just didn't seem natural. It didn't seem realistic, and I just was put off by it a lot of the times. And then also we have our typical mother who like is basically saying teenagers nowadays are totally different. And I was just annoyed by that fact. I felt like that I was definitely not part of the target audience for this book, and I feel like a lot of my older viewers who have children that are entering into university and who are within the same age group as Jessica would relate a lot to this book. But since I'm on the younger side, I did not relate to this novel. I grew bored of it, and I ended up giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. So following up with the book of Not the Girl You Marry is Not That Kind of Guy by Andy J. Christopher. This book comes out on April 14th, 2020, and this one is, I read an e-galley of it, so I actually don't have the physical copy of this book as well. And this is the time where I actually read the words instead of listening to the audiobook, unlike the first novel. And this one was a very big hit in the face of how much I don't like Andy J. Christopher's writing. I feel like she does a lot of telling, not showing. There's large passages of writing where we walk through the actions of what our characters are doing rather than us like having a conversation about it, whether we're like actually like seeing how the relationship is forming or breaking down. This book follows our character named Bridget, and Bridget is a lot older than our main male hero named Matt, and Bridget is actually Matt's like mentor in the law firm, and Bridget is very like no nonsense. She's very good at her job, and she just came out of a long-term relationship with a guy that she thought that she was going to marry ever since she was a child, and for God knows what reason, the ex turns out to be the biggest jerk that I've ever read in a romance novel before. I fucking hate him, and I don't understand why she ever loved him, and that just proves my point of whether or not I believe that Bridget is actually just a very shallow character that fell for someone for their looks and didn't think too deeply of it, because why else would you date someone for that long knowing that he is that big of an asshole? Like, I just don't get it. And then so Bridget is coming out of that relationship, and she doesn't want to have a relationship. She just wants to be single, and she just wants to focus on her career and being a partner in her law firm. Matt is coming from a very privileged, well, noble family in America. He is, I believe, 100% Japanese, and his parents have documented the wars happening in America and like things like that for like a long generations. He has a lot of money. He's from a lot of wealth. So complete opposite of Bridget, who is basically handling for herself, and she's taking care of herself. And they start a fake relationship so that Matt can tick off his parents, who are very over controlling, and then she can get over the guy. I don't even know the motivations behind the characters anymore, because the motivations behind the characters were just so weak. Like, if you have to enter into a fake relationship to get back at your parents who are very over controlling, that's just too much for me. You are a young boy who does not know what to do with your life, and I don't get it. And when they declared their love for each other, I did not believe it one bit. I did not like the characters. I did not like the writing. I did not like the overall package of it. It was also very dramatic. There's this one scene in the novel where Matt's parents are conflicted about Bridget and don't want Bridget in their lives because they think Bridget is a gold digger. And I was like, is this a Korean drama? Like, what is this? Like, I don't get it. So I gave this book a 1 out of 5 stars, and unfortunately I don't recommend you to read this novel if you didn't like the first one, and if you don't like any J. Christopher's novels, just skip it. Just save your time. So the last book that I want to talk about is one of my most anticipated novels, and I finally read it, and it's called it's a book called Not Like the Movies by Carrie Winfrey, and this book comes out on July 7th, 2020. So this is the second book in the Waiting for Tom Hanks series by Carrie Winfrey that came out last year. I read Waiting for Tom Hanks. A lot of people didn't like Waiting for Tom Hanks, and I get it. I get it. There's a lot of problems with our characters. There's a lot of problems with the story that happened. But for some reason, I read it in the way that Carrie Winfrey was doing this on purpose because she wanted to follow a romantic comedy plotline. And that's why things were very outrageous and things happened this way. But then when I read the second novel, Not Like the Movies, I just kind of took a step back and realized that maybe Carrie Winfrey wasn't following the way that I thought she was, and maybe the first book isn't as good as I thought it was, because this one I actually ended up giving a 2 out of 5 stars. It made me very annoyed because of the characters and how the situation unfolded. So this book follows our main character Chloe, who is the best friend of our main character from the last novel. So if you guys don't remember, if you guys never read the first novel, so the first novel is basically about a screenwriter who gets famous by writing a script on a new romantic comedy featuring a barista and the barista falling in love with her boss. And this is depicted on her best friend Chloe. So this is actually Chloe and Nick's story. So Chloe is a barista and Nick is the owner of the coffee shop. And Chloe and Nick are enemies to lovers, and they hate each other, or they seem like they hate each other. They do a lot of quick, witty banter against each other, and he always seems like he's very grouchy and rough around her. Like, not like he's mean to her, but he's just like, you know, get back to work, like, you never work, like, you know, like all this nitpicking and stuff like that. And the tension is cute, and it started off really great. I really liked it, and I was like raving about it for the first 30% until I started realizing that Chloe was actually a horrible person, and I didn't like it at all. So a little bit more backstory on Chloe is that Chloe is dealing with a lot of stuff. She is finishing her online business degree because she wants to open a business, like in particular a bakery, and she's online finishing her business degree. She's taking care of her father, who has a debilitating disease, who is starting to lose his memories and entering into dementia, and who is basically forgetting a lot of things, and at like this special place where there's like an at-home care where somebody can watch him 24/7. And she's also dealing with the fact that her brother has left her to take care of the father herself, and she has a lot of things going on. She's also very stressed because she's she's helping her best friend plan the wedding. And then plus on top of that, they have this movie that's coming out that's basically about her life, and people are coming up to her and recognizing her as the main character of the movie that is about to come out. I don't know how, because like it's just a trailer, but everybody like thinks it's her, but whatever, we're gonna skip that part. So basically she's also fighting the sexual attention that she has with Nick, and Nick doesn't seem like he's at all interested. He's like scared because he doesn't want to enter into a relationship unless it's 100%, but she's not willing to give that 100%, but she wants to take 99% of it without the relationship part. And that's the part where it bugs me the most. I felt like that she was very emotionally manipulative of his emotions, because she like asks him for help even though she's not willing to give her heart and her soul to him. And it just doesn't make sense to me why you would toy someone around. And it doesn't make sense to me that that could be a romance as well, because I just felt that she was so selfish. Like she was so selfish towards her love towards Nick. She wasn't selfish towards everybody else. So I just didn't like that at all, and I didn't appreciate it, and it left a very bad taste in my mouth. And even though in the end she did apologize, I did not care for it, and I was still mad about it. So I ended up giving a 2 out of 5 stars, and lots of my friends are very disappointed by my rating, and lots of people don't actually want to read this book, but I don't want to discourage people from not reading a book because of my ratings. But hopefully you guys make informed choices and still choose to read it if you're highly anticipating it. Maybe because I'm reading too deeply into it, and maybe that's why my rating's so low. But I would love to talk to you guys more about it once the book comes out and if you guys have read it. But anyways, that is it for all the romantic comedies that I have read in the past week of March. I did a very good job of crossing things off my TBR, and I can't wait to read more e-galleys that I have on my Kindle. I'm excited for a lot more new releases coming out in the later half of 2020, and I'm just kind of like keeping my eye out on them for NetGalley. But anyways, until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.